find something that you're passionate about, people. I've been running a philanthropy now for 6 years, and find some place to do good and then do it. If there's something that is meaningful for you, do it. Give your time, give your energy, give your money, whatever it is that you can do to make the world a better place, because it is so gratifying to do that.
Okay, welcome back or welcome to the Finding Mastery podcast. I am your host, Dr. Michael Gervais, by trade and training a high-performance psychologist. And I'm really excited to welcome Paula Schneider to the podcast for this week's conversation. Many would refer to today's guest as a survivor, but it's fair to say her impact goes far beyond survival. Whether she's staring down a terrifying cancer diagnosis or a failing corporate juggernaut, Paula has proven she can conquer the greatest of challenges, turning personal pain into purpose and inspired leadership into real legacy. As president and CEO of the Susan G. Komen Breast Cancer Foundation, Paula is responsible for the largest breast cancer research portfolio and one of the most prominent nonprofits in the world. Komen has invested $3.5 billion in research and advocacy, helping reduce the breast cancer mortality rate by 42% since its inception in 1982. Clearly, no small feat. And then prior to her time at Komen, she navigated one of the most notable retail sector turnarounds while serving as the CEO of American Apparel. Again, no small feat. Across education, fashion, retail management, and nonprofit industries, Paula has demonstrated the kind of business acumen, entrepreneurial expertise, adaptability, and real-world perspective that can move proverbial mountains. That's why I'm so thrilled to explore the passion and perseverance that has allowed her to thrive so brilliantly, even in the face of immense difficulty. I think you'll quickly learn how, in her words, she stays calm with fires burning all around her. So with that, let's dive right into this week's conversation with Paula Schneider. Paula, you went from a costume design major in college to American Apparel CEO to major fashion brands to CEO of the Susan G. Komen Breast Cancer Foundation. Whew. What an arc. And maybe we can just start with you sharing some of the key experiences that helped shape your professional arc.
Yeah, well, it was a very circuitous route. Certainly not one that was, started in one place and you planned all the parts and pieces, because I don't really think that life turns out that way. But I have to say that I think it's all part of being somewhat entrepreneurial to start with. When I got my costume design and theater major, I actually wrote that major, and it became part of the California state curriculum for universities in California, because I didn't see anything else that I wanted to do. So I wrote my major, I graduated with my major. I never actually used my major, but I did have the ability to make a fabulous costume, and I'm wonderful at Halloween. If you want any tips, I'll be happy to help you there. But I ended up going into the fashion industry because I actually I got my teaching credential because you always had to have a plan B. My mom always said, what's your plan B if you can't make it with plan A? And so my plan B was getting a secondary teaching credential, which I did, and I made $735 a month. I was 23 years old, and you can't live on that even then. And so I decided I started working in a clothing store and ended up going down to Los Angeles, seeing that this whole world in the fashion industry was really exciting and fun, and especially then, not so much now, but certainly then. And I ended up going into the fashion industry and learning the trade and doing that for many, many years, and had my own company. I started my own company at 25 with a $5,000 loan from my mom. And we had, literally I grew up very, very middle class. My dad died when I was 20 and my mom was on her own. And, $5,000 was a lot of money at that point for her. But she lent it to me and I created a career from that. But, there's not one straight arc that happens, and things happen in your career and you kind of have to go where your heart is. And, after many, many years in the fashion industry, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And when that happened, my mom had already had a breast cancer diagnosis, and I had 2 young daughters at the time. And, I didn't immediately go into some passion project. I was working, and I just wanted to get back to my life, which was taking care of my family. And, I had a great career and fabulous friends and all of those things. But when you get a diagnosis like that, it's very life-changing, if you will.
Go where your heart is. Kind of follow the path that makes sense to you based on where you are. Have a plan B versus
Yeah, I'm not really
like
one
burn the
for a
bridges
plan
all
B.
in.
I really am not one for a plan B. I'm absolutely a risk taker. And I made the reason that I ended up at Susan G. Komen is because I was getting an award for being one of the top retailers in the country by a Women in Retail conference. And I was supposed to literally give a speech on how, empowerment, because it was a women's group, and bring it back to retail, which I had nothing. So I got up on stage and I had the conversation. And I was literally having a chat with myself about what would be meaningful for me and what was really empowering. And I got up and I spoke about being the most empowered when I was the least physically powerful when I had breast cancer, because when you're used to being so large and in charge, and when you're running companies and you have your family obligations and all of those things that are inherent with being, a woman leader, you have to accept help. I literally couldn't make it to the bathroom without help, right, during treatment. So for me, it was a very powerful time to let all your friends and your family step up, help you out. And they did in spades. And I was giving that speech, and a good friend of mine who was the CEO of Chico's at the time, we'd literally had breakfast that morning, and I told her, I got to do something that's more meaningful than this. I know, I can sell 1 million pair of jeans to Bloomingdale's, but I don't give a rat's ass if I sell one more pair. I can do it, but I really would rather do something that really is meaningful for me. And while I was on stage giving that speech, I went back and sat next to her, and she said, oh my God, I just got an email from a friend of mine who is a recruiter, and they're looking for a new CEO of Susan G. Komen. And would you ever consider doing something like that? And I said, yes, I would. And it was, it wasn't that immediate, because I was running a publicly traded company at the time. And I, the next morning, got the job rec. I had breakfast with my husband. And I said, so this happened yesterday. So I gave notice, and then I started the interview process. And it was a long interview process, because they brought me down from LA to Texas 3 times during the summer. You would think they didn't want me to take the job. But by then, I still thought, wow, okay, this is really something. There's only one reason I'd ever move away from my family and out of LA or the Southern California area, and that would be for this. And it's meaningful. My mom died of metastatic breast cancer. My brother died of prostate cancer. I had obviously breast cancer, and I had a very, very, very severe kind of breast cancer. And I have 2 daughters. So enough said. I mean, I'm in it to win it.
Oh man. I mean, it all makes sense when you're lining it up like this. And there's so much that I want to drill into. And so one of them is that last thing, is that you had a serious diagnosis of breast cancer. Help me understand what that means. Like I know a bit, but I certainly don't know what you know. And maybe our community can benefit from you explaining what a serious diagnosis versus a non-serious diagnosis of
Well,
cancer would be.
it's the stage and it's the subtype, right? So
Okay.
I had it's called triple negative, and it just really means that it's not this, it's not that, and it's not the other thing. 3 negatives, and those are all things that there are better treatments for.
Oh, so if you have a positive, like that's favorable. It's like we know how to treat that.
It depends on the subtype that you have. Triple negative is known to be one of the more deadly types of breast cancer. So
Jesus. Okay.
and so you're told it's bad, it's not great, and we're going to hit you with our best shot. And and chemo was tough, but you really, really, really tough, especially when you're again used to being large and in charge. But I had the opportunity to lean on my friends and family and put one foot in front of the other. And I remember during the course of chemo, I got a flyer in the mail to join one of the endurance walks for breast cancer. And I thought, okay, I'm going to raise $5,000. I'm going to do that. Because I couldn't even walk. That was like walking to the bathroom and back was like climbing Mount Kilimanjaro then, because you just couldn't do it. And I thought, I could walk 60 miles. I can do that. And so I ended up raising over $500,000, $20 at a time over the next 5 years. I got my daughters involved. They did the walks with me. I had every single summer we put on an event that was like putting on a wedding where you had to ask for everything for free. It literally took over for about 5 years, and I wore my friends out, but I thought, you know what? If I live for 5 years, then I will stop all of this and then we will go on from there. And I did. And that was from 2007 to about 2000, I guess, 13, 15. And I had the opportunity to do all of this work for breast cancer. And then after that, I was kind of like, okay, well, now what am I going to do?
That was before you were offered the job at
Oh,
Susan
yeah,
Komen.
way before. Way before.
That was like when you're in treatment, like you're in the thick of
yeah.
Okay. Do you call it, like when you think of your relationship with cancer, do you think of it like I beat cancer, I fought cancer, I danced with cancer, I had a relationship with cancer? Like how do you?
Yeah, it's a shitty relationship if you have to have it. But, I would say no. First of all, you never beat it. You may have no evidence of disease, but you just don't know, right? Because there can be a recurrence at any point in time. And that's what we're studying all the time and trying to figure out, because it's not breast cancer that kills you. It's when you have a recurrence and it spreads and becomes metastatic. And it's metastatic cancer that kills you, which is stage 4. And that's, that can be terminal, usually is terminal. But you can live, depending on your doctors, your care, your type of cancer. It's very personalized. You can live for a long time. I luckily am not metastatic, have never been metastatic. And, I'm now living a very healthy, normal life. But it doesn't mean that I don't think about it a lot, especially because, I'm running the world's largest breast cancer organization. And I get to meet a lot of people that I really become close with, and then they don't make it. And, but for the grace of God, I sit here and say, okay, well, that could be me. But instead of like really bumming out about it, which you can, and you can go into a dark place, I try to put my needs in the background and say, okay, I'm doing this for them. I'm doing this for all of our stakeholders that need it. And it's can be sort of a very heavy job many days of the week. And you try to fill your cup with, all the humanity that you can help.
You hinted at a couple things, and I do want to understand the mindset, but let me just pause that for a minute. You said grace of God. So do you have a spiritual practice or framework that you're working from to help guide your thoughts and actions?
Yeah, I would say I'm spiritual. I'm not religious.
Okay. And it's deity based, meaning you see a God?
Yes and no. Okay. For me, it was more about just really, I live in sort of this metaphysical world that I believe that, what you put out there comes back to you. And when I was sick, every single day that I was sick, I created a mantra that I am healthy, I am happy. And I literally, every step I would take, I would, say my mantra of being healthy and happy until I was healthy and happy.
Square that with me with like, I'm healthy and happy. I can get that I could be happy in many circumstances, like, and obviously some are going to challenge my sense of joy and happiness. Okay. But like, how did you square I'm healthy with when you know that you've got cancer inside of you? How did you square that?
Well, because for me, I was visualizing what that would look like. Right. And that's how sort of I deal with it. It was a visualization technique for me to be able to say, I am healthy, I'm happy, and get my mind there. Because I do think that a lot of being able to get yourself through treatment is staying mentally strong while you do it. And you have to look forward to something. I remember, when I was at my last cancer treatment that I had my gardeners, because I couldn't do it, plant like 1,000 bulbs because I was done on January 4th. I remember that. And I wanted all of this new life to come up during that time so that I could, have sort of this resurgence of life and get back to my old world and have something beautiful come out of this. And actually something beautiful did, because I now have this opportunity to help so many people, so many women, so many families that, and I never would have done this in a million years. I would not be sitting in this chair if life hadn't intervened. And the only reason that I would have taken this on and learned everything that I have had to learn over the course of the last 6 years is because I care so much about this specific disease and the tragedies that happen because of it.
This is where I like when you're framing it this way, I get really excited because I've seen this same parallel from sport to business, from sport to parenting, whatever it might be, is that when you have I don't want to say a command because I don't want to assume too much yet, but when you have a real strength of mind, it might not be masterful, it might not be like full command. We'll leave that for a rare space for a moment. But when you have a sense of how to work with your mind, you could go into just about any environment and orientate yourself in such a way that, of course, growth is going to take place for that environment, for yourself, for others. And that is one way to think about success. And whether it's business success, family success, whatever, that's what I'm trying to get at when I ask the question about what was your framing and what was your mindset around the diagnosis with cancer. And so I'm trying to understand in a respectful way, like, I'm a fighter, I've got a fighter mindset, or is it something more poetic, which is like, listen, it's a phase and I'm just here in the phase and I'm great at transitions and this is a transition I'm working through. Like, help me understand that, because I think that that'll port to one of the reasons you're successful in other areas of your life as well.
And I would say, if you think about my background, is I was a turnaround girl for the most part. I mean, there was an entrepreneurial side when I ran companies early on, and then one company that I took on the role as president of, I had to turn it around, and then all of a sudden you become that person that has to do this, and women are offered, quite frankly, more jobs that are more challenging than others. So for me, it's understanding like really quick decisions in chaotic circumstances, figuring out what is the best, most logical move for you to make really quickly. I make decisions on a dime. I bought a house without seeing it, and my daughter was like, "What the hell, Mom?" I'm like, "Okay, but it's a moment in time. I know exactly where it is. And, like you go." And for me, it was the same sort of background. I created a business plan for my benefit and for me to get better, right? And who I wanted in that part of that business plan, what doctors I would interview, all of those things. But it was because of my background of being in these sort of turnaround situations where there's fires literally burning all around you, that you all of a sudden get to the point where you go, okay, this is really serious. Because before, nobody was dying. Now I could possibly be dying. I could possibly be leaving my kids behind. I'm going to create a plan to go forward. And, I appreciate and actually kind of envy those that have really, really strong religious faith that can take them there. Mine was more spiritual faith and more business acumen almost, because I literally started this and thought, okay, I'm going to create a way for me to get through this, and I'm going to figure it out, and I'm going to do it.
That part is so apparent for even the groundedness in this conversation and how you're approaching, these questions and the way that you're finding words to express. There's a weight to it that I can feel, which is like it's just a breath of fresh air. You're not trying to sell something. You're not trying to it's just an honest conversation about how you approached specific moments in your life. I do want to talk about the fire burning. And I read this quote and I was going to bring it up to you. The quote was, "I can have fires burning all around me and I will stay perfectly calm."
And I'm going to use this story. When it was literally, I got hired to be the CEO of American Apparel, which was its own bucket of crazy. And it was Christmas Eve day. It had been announced that I was coming. I wasn't starting in the job until I think it was the 2nd of January or something. But I had a couple of people that I had worked with before that I invited them, come down, let's see what I've got going here, because it's really kind of a crazy mess. And I would love your help. And so and this is in downtown LA, we had 1.5 million square feet of manufacturing space. So there's thousands and thousands and thousands of people working in this space. And so we were in the building. I don't know what floor I was on. I literally don't even know my way around the building, but they're huge. And so I was on the top floor, I guess, at that point. I found out later. And I see the head of retail literally running towards me as fast as she can. And this is the length of a football field, or 2 or 3, right? It's huge. And I'm thinking, that's interesting. I wonder what she's got on her mind to make her sprint across the floor. Okay.
Yeah.
And so she comes up to me and she goes, "There's a fire." And I go, "Where?" And she said, "In the elevator shaft." And I said, "Okay." And we go around a corner and I can see at the other end of this massive space that there's smoke literally pouring out of the elevator shaft. And there's thousands of people on the floor. literally sewing as fast as you can, right? And I'm thinking, okay. And I said, so what is the protocol when there's a fire? She said, I don't know. I go, okay, well, who's here that might know? It's Christmas Eve day. I don't know who's here. I'm like, okay.
Oh, wait. What's happening? You're in that moment. What's happening in your body? And what are the competing thoughts that are
Okay, the
taking place
competing
in
thoughts
that
is get
moment?
yourself out of the building as quickly as you possibly can, right? Because
Yes,
you'd
yes.
actually like to live to see Christmas Eve that night. And your family's coming over in a little bit. And so that's one competing thought. And the other one is, oh my God, nobody's getting up and running out of here. And there's nobody in charge. And literally, these people are sitting and they're sewing. And I'm thinking, because they get paid by the piece, right? So they wanted to finish and there's smoke billowing in. And I'm thinking, oh, okay. So I stopped her and I said, so what floor am I on? And she said, 7. I said, how many floors are in the building? 7. I said, okay. So I'm going to take 7, 6, and 5. You take 4, 3, and 2, assuming the ground floor is the ground floor. And I said, and I need you to go clear out the building. Can you do that? She said, yes. I said, okay. So this man walks by me. He's this Hispanic young man. I grab his arm. I'm like, hi, you don't know me. Nobody sees this. I mean, I don't know if they're not seeing the smoke. I'm smelling it. I'm seeing it. It's like, I'm thinking, what the hell? And so I grab his arm and I said, what's your name? And he tells me his name. And I said, do you speak English? And he said, yes. And I said, oh, well, I'm Paula. You haven't met me yet, but I'm going to be starting on, January 5th or whatever it is as the new boss, as the new CEO. And I said, and I need your help. And I have a death grip on this guy's arm. And he's like, okay, he's looking at me like I'm kind of have 3 heads. And I said, is fuego fire in Spanish? And I think it is, he says, yes. And I said, okay, I'm going to start yelling fuego as loud as I can.
Oh
now.
my God. Okay. Wait. This is so good. And so there's one other thing to just let me.
When I say
okay,
if there's fires all around me, I am not kidding.
Okay. So you've got a death grip, but are you speaking clearly and
no, I'm
extremely
calm, extremely calm.
Okay. So it's a little bit of like that duck analogy underneath, like there's a lot of work that's taking place because you've got the death grip, the heart is accelerated, but you're presenting like we've got it all together.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't, in my mind's eye, I had no choice. I had to get all of these folks out of the building, because there's no way I was going to just go. Obviously, I would never do that in a million years when I just wanted to make sure that these people and there's literally thousands. So it's not like, I'm like, do you know where the stairs are to this guy? He says, yes. So I go through yelling fuego as loud as I possibly can with my death grip on my new friend. And he is explaining, he's pointing to the stairs. I said, I need you to say, don't take the elevator in Spanish. And there's 22 languages spoken there. So, we figured with English and Spanish, I did, that we would get to most people. And then people were coming up to me and saying, well, do I take my purse? Are we done for the day? Will I get paid today? I'm like, I'm not sure, but yes, take all your stuff and just go, right? And you have to go quickly. So that's why, and it should have been a precursor to what actually went on at American Apparel on the daily there, right? But that was just a moment in time.
I've heard some stories. Yeah. Okay. So did you wrestle at all with like, am I overreacting? Am I going to be that person that overreacts? Or were all signals like, this is the most prudent, like we need to take
I think
action?
logic kicks in. I really do. I think logic kicks in because, you have to decide I wanted me out of the building. Right. And
yeah, there you
in
go.
order to get me out of the building, I had to get everybody else out of the building. And I could hear the fire trucks going, coming. I could hear that, which was good. I got down to the 6th floor with, but there's thousands of people walking downstairs that are this narrow. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I hope it doesn't really get bad. And it turned out that it was just a fire in the elevator shaft itself, and it never, moved further, thank God. But we got everybody out of the building, and then I went home.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so did you say logic takes over? Is that what you said?
Yeah, logic takes over.
But emotion can take over. So for most, unless they've conditioned their mind, unless there's some sort of psychological skill, or I'll pause there, unless there's some sort of psychological skill to help them manage highly charged emotional moments. So help me understand how you were able to default to logic and not be overrun by emotion.
Mike, I think when you are having had a breast cancer diagnosis or a cancer diagnosis, when you're told it's bad and you think of that you could lose your entire world and say goodbye to your children and your husband and your family and all of that. Once you go through something like that, you kind of are desensitized to a lot of other things, right? So that's the worst thing that could possibly happen, other than maybe losing a child. But and in my mind's eye, it was like, okay, we just have to handle this, and we go. And I've always been really calm. I mean, I would think that I've had thousands of employees, and I remember saying to somebody, I think that's great. I'm super excited about that. I have to tell you. And they said, yeah, you would have to tell me because we wouldn't know unless you told me. So I must not exude a lot of emotion. I got held up at gunpoint one time, and there was a gun to my head, and I was super calm. So, I thought, okay.
Oh my God. Okay, so I think you're backing me into, like, I'm nodding my head because I think one of the most powerful statements that we can make to ourselves is, I can do hard things. There's this knowing that I can do hard things because I've been through hard things, and I don't get the fake it till you make it. I don't get that. I've come to learn that the athletes and the performers and the people in this world that are exceptional during highly emotionally challenging times is that there's a sense that they've earned that, no, I do hard things. Like, okay, I'm in it. I'm okay. Let's figure it out.
Yeah.
And you're saying, I mean, no one wishes this, but you're saying, like, yeah, working with cancer gave me that right to say it.
And you just have to remain calm because what other options do you have? And, by the way, the brain is going really quickly.
Okay, but what other options do you have? Most people don't operate that way because the emotions run the show.
Okay.
And so that's what I want to try to figure out. It's like, how did you do that? And I don't have a sense that you've done formal psychological skills training like an athlete or an artist. Like, no, right. And so I'm trying to square up, like, okay, there's psychological skills training that allows you to be calm. There's purpose, and we've got a big purpose. It can help you deal with many things in life. And then there's this other, which is like a philosophical framework or spiritual framework. Like, and there's lots of ways like we could pull on that, lots of sayings or phraseology that point to something else. Like, God has a plan is one philosophy versus I'm being tested. It's another. There's lots of philosophies about life after death and life now, squared with purpose, squared with psychological skills training. And that's what I'm trying to rotate around your power, if
I
you
think
will.
this is the school of hard knocks, right? And you go through that.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
And you learn. I mean, there's not been a lot of formal training. I have been an executive for a long time, and I've been to the Center for Creative Leadership, and I've done some of these things during the course of time. But I think it's more inherent. It's kind of like being a salesperson. You either have it or you don't, and you're never going to get it if you don't have it.
So the word mindset is cool, but you need an adjective, or we need an adjective in front of it. Mm-hmm. So your mind, you're using your mind in a certain way. What is the adjective that you would use before that mindset?
There's a determination for sure.
Like a determined mindset?
Yeah, or a fearless mindset. I had to do it. I just had to do it. I felt like that was, the reward that I would get would be, and because it also meant that every step you took, you were going towards being better health. You don't have a freaking choice. You have to put one foot in front of the other when you're sick like that, unless you want to roll up in a ball and die and leave your family behind. And, there's so much mother bear in that, where I wasn't going to do that. If there was anything in my power to make it happen, I was not going to leave anyone behind.
You seem like the size of you, and I'm speaking from a psychological, you would call it.
I hope so.
But the size of you is like, it's really big, and it feels. I wonder if people say this to you, like, you've got this determined. You haven't used the word fighter, and I don't know if that's by design or not, but like, you've got this determined, powerful way about you. And I wonder if people, if that scares people or it feels safe. In this conversation, you feel warm, and I would love to be in the foxhole with you because I'm like, oh, yeah, okay, we got somebody that sees her people and has a path forward and is like gonna, I think, bring out the best of her team, of the foxhole.
Mhm.
But I'm making some leaps here. And so I do want to get to your leadership style, but I'm just trying to start with mindset. So how do people respond to you in that with these types of capabilities that you have?
Well, I think that different businesses that I've run have required different leadership styles. Like, at
Mm,
Komen, it's a very soft culture, and it's led with
mm.
kindness. And I lead with kindness because, everything we do is about being kind and about being caring and about helping other people. And I can even say that with Komen. We entered into COVID, right? And, a lot of our fundraising was bringing 10,000 of your closest friends together in one of our races and walks. And we couldn't do that anymore. So we had to make all kinds of slashes and chaotic moments, right? And because I didn't know if we were going to raise another dollar at that point. So we closed 63 offices. And this is all in the first 4 weeks of COVID. We closed 63 offices. We went completely virtual. We had an affiliate structure that we went into a single incorporation because the affiliates, each one of them, the majority of their fundraising was done through races and walks. And if this wasn't over, COVID wasn't over, within a 3 to 6 month period, we would have lost all our community work. And it's a pretty massive restructuring and undertaking. And I got my board to go along with it, and we went. And literally, it was, I think we closed April or March 22nd, and we made these decisions by April 10th. And way out ahead.
Oh, that's fast.
It was
Yeah.
super fast, and we did it, very purposefully, because at that point I had already done all of my, my chaotic turnaround stuff, right? So for me, you have, when you are pressed with something that is really as dire as COVID was for many, many, many companies, and certainly almost all charities, you had to make decisions, and you had to make them super fast and go. And I, talked my board into it, and off we went.
Let's drill into that turnaround stuff. I mean, this was not easy stuff that you were doing again at American Apparel. Like when you came in, you had to do a massive furlough. And if I read it correctly, you and your family needed bodyguards. Like this was
Yeah.
was pretty intense.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hmm.
So when you make hard, fast, difficult, challenging decisions that involve people's livelihood,
Yeah.
their well-being in some respects, how do you go about that? Take I'm taking the kindness as part of the value that you're working from.
Okay.
Is it measure twice, cut once? Is it be intuitive and
No,
go?
it's not measured twice, cut once. You don't have time. If you're 70% of the way there, go.
Is that on two-way decisions and one-way doors and two-way doors? Is it for both of those?
Meaning,
So a two-way decision is like we're going to put our content on a server, and it's an expensive move, but we could change servers later. A one-way decision is like once I make the decision, there's no way back. Like we've burnt the bridge. It's
yeah,
all
I
in.
think most of them have been one-way decisions.
Yeah. So you get 70% of the way there, and you're like, we got to go.
It depends on how bad or rough the turnaround is. And I can go back to Komen on that. We had no choice. The opposite was that we would watch ourselves go out of business as the months ticked by. And that wasn't an option because there was no one there to pick up the pieces and do what we do as an organization and for all the good that we do for women's health. So that wasn't an option. When I was at Monaco Swimwear Group, we did a big giant restructuring. That was more at the cut or the measure twice, cut once, where you had everything and you had time. You had time to plan it out. But if you don't have time, you have to just make decisions and you have to be mostly right. And most of the time you're
Oh,
right, but not all turnarounds work.
can you sum up the problem and the solution at American Apparel, and maybe more specifically what you were walking into?
Yes. I would say American Apparel had lost $400 million in the previous years, 3-4 years before I got there. There was almost no cash in the business. And I literally did a first 13-week cash flow, and we were going to hit the skids in like, I don't know, 10 weeks. And it was a publicly traded company. So I knew almost nothing about what the opportunities were in there because I'd only been there for, I don't know, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. But we had no choice but to make decisions to furlough people until we could figure out what is the right amount of people that we actually need for the amount of stores that we had. And so what was performing, what wasn't performing, million different pieces there. And nobody wants to stop people from having a living wage. That was never, ever the goal. The goal was to save the company so that the majority of people who could be employed there would still have a living wage, and to save the business.
Okay. Totally get it. And can you put that same framing on the Susan G. Komen Breast Cancer Foundation, which is like, what's the problem? What do you see as the solution?
The problem there was the structure of the organization. Because if you think an affiliate structure has, there were 1,100 individual board members that were out there at the 63 affiliates, and each one had a government.
Wait. Say that again.
63 little baby businesses. And you had, like there might have been, well, there was, let's say the affiliate of Susan G. Komen, Orange County, Susan G. Komen, New Jersey, Susan G. Komen, Ohio, Susan G. Komen, blah, blah, blah. So all across the country, we had 63 businesses. Each one of those, it was kind of like a license or a franchise agreement. Each one of those would give a certain percentage of their revenue to the mothership, which would use that money for research. And a lot of things were done in the field, right? So in order to save that, you remember the day. I mean, I know you do, just like I do, where COVID started and you were like, oh, well, I have a vacation plan for middle of July. I probably have to move it to August now because it'll be done by then, right? And of course, as a CEO of a company, you have to look at, well, what if it's not? What happens if it's 3 months? What happens if it's 6 months? What happens if it's 9 months? And where will we be at the end of the time here? So I, in my mind's eye, you take the worst possible scenario. Let's say it goes on for another year. And that's how I based every bit of my decision making. If this is going to go on for another year, which it went on for way longer than that, right? How do I make sure that we are here on the other side of this? So we cut down our expenses dramatically. We changed the way that we did races and walks to virtual. We got out of all of our leases. We changed our whole structure to a single incorporation instead of an affiliate model, which was always a better choice. I was working towards that anyway, but that would have taken years for us to do, because then you just have to get buy-in affiliate by affiliate by affiliate. And this way was like everybody's hair was on fire. So I don't think many people out there would care what are the inner workings of how Susan G. Komen is structured. Donors just want to know that it's structured in the most efficient, effective way to give back as much as you can to the community that you support. So I used all of those things and have, a great team that helped me with it and a fabulous board.
Okay. Do you push back from the desk and think deeply with the information that you've gathered, which is usually imperfect information, and then bring people along? Or do you gather information, already have a sense of where you want to go to build a consensus so that it's the team moving forward?
Latter.
Like, what is that style? It's the latter. So you get a sense and a feel, and then you start watering seeds, not manipulating, but bringing people along, and then it's like a united front?
Yeah, it's sort of, this is what I think would work. This is what I think the best opportunity is. But we have a really interesting culture, and I'm hoping that this has been most places that I've been, not in the middle of a massive turnaround, but we've learned we trust each other. We have a great team, and I push a lot of times on things that I just want to hear them argue back with me.
Oh, how do you do that? How do you do that?
It's essentially saying this is what I think, but you can convince me otherwise, but you'd have to work pretty hard at it. So go. And if people, and believe me, and it was a Southern organization. It started in Dallas, right? And it had been there for many, many years. And I remember going through some of my first and early meetings with the board and meetings with my staff, and even their body language it was so interesting to see. It's like you really aren't buying into what they're saying, right? We're in a meeting, and if I'm saying something and I can see somebody's not agreeing with me, instead of calling them out and saying, okay, you clearly don't feel that way, so tell me what you're thinking. And it becomes then, once it's a safe place to do that, where people can exchange their ideas and feel like they're valued, because they are valued, then you get a lot of flow of information. And I think that's the best way to do it. So it really is. And I wasn't really sure. I mean, I had never been through a COVID before. I wasn't 100% positive that this would work. I'm going to use an analogy. While I was at American Apparel, I'm great at cocktail parties, just so you know. When I was at American Apparel, I went to the Middle East, and people were so that we could talk about opening stores in Dubai. And so I was in Dubai and Kuwait, and people would say, what are you going to the Middle East for? And I said, I just really want to feel safe for a week or so. So I'm going to go to the Middle East where I feel really safe, as opposed to having my bodyguards and all of that in American Apparel. But I get home, and my phone is absolutely blowing up. And from Dubai to California is a bazillion hours on the plane. You watch 10,000 movies. And this gentleman his name was Blue, and he ran our security. I can see I have like 20 messages from Blue before I'm even landing, right? I'm thinking, okay, this is not good, because it's always going to be something really bad if he's that determined to find me. So I get off the plane, and I call Blue and I go, what's up? And he says, there's a bomb threat. I go, where? And he said, and he names the buildings these are the offices, right? But the offices were only 300 people that work for the corporate office, and the rest were the humanity that built and created all of our clothes and sewed them, etc. So I'm like, okay. And I had just watched this movie on the plane about Max, the bomb sniffing dog. And so I go,
so now you're an expert. Now you know exactly
absolutely
what to do.
I said, so let's call a K9 unit. And he goes, okay. And I'm thinking to myself, what the hell do I know about this? I literally know nothing other than just watching this movie. And it was a good movie, so I took that, and
it's like a junior in college that's studying psychology. It's like the most dangerous person, because they know a little bit now.
But not enough. But we had Alan, the bomb sniffing dog, that literally came to meet me at my car every morning. He would walk in. He was a really cute shepherd. He'd walk in, he'd take me to my office, sniff around, and, the executive offices. Then he would go through the building, and he was on staff for like 6 weeks, our bomb sniffing dog. You make decisions, and a lot of times it's the command that you make them with. And if you feel like it's not going to be really wrong, I mean, there wouldn't be really anything wrong with having a bomb sniffing dog. I don't really know what else to do. And maybe that was the wrong decision, but you make it and you go.
Okay. What stands behind the pink ribbon? And I was in the NFL for about a decade, and it was awesome. Like during this month of October, where people would rally behind it. And there's amazing when you're in a stadium of 70,000 people, and there's a question, stand up if you've been affected by cancer.
And everyone in the stadium stands up. Almost.
Well, they do. There's two questions. Stand up if you personally have been affected by cancer. Bang. Okay, there's a good, healthy amount. It's like, wow, everyone applauds. And then the follow-on question is, stand up if you know somebody in your intimate life that has been affected by cancer.
Yeah.
And then it's literally the entire stadium.
Yeah.
So what's behind the pink ribbon? And Susan G. Komen has done a great job here, but I want to understand it.
We created the pink ribbon, and it was literally done. Nancy Brinker, who was the founder of Susan G. Komen, and her sister was Susan. And so her sister died at 37. She made the promise to her sister that she was going to spend her life to help and figure this out. And this has been a movement. All of the peer-to-peer fundraising and the races and the walks were all started by Nancy. So she's a force to be reckoned with. And it's actually quite pissed that we haven't cured it by now. But, that's what, and it really, in October, started so that, National Breast Cancer Awareness Month, so that people would remember, to get their mammograms, right? And then, it became much more of a movement. And now if you see, we have, hundreds of thousands of people that participate in our race walks our races, and our walks around the world. The amount of humanity that cares. We have 3 million people that come to our website, and they're not coming to go shopping. They're coming because they are either diagnosed themselves, or they have a family member, or they're the worried well, they felt a lump, or whatever it is. And we're a really good trusted source. If you ever have a breast cancer diagnosis, hit us up, because you don't go to Dr. Google, because then everybody's going to die, right? And if you literally want to know very fact-based material, then you want to go to Komen. And I have to say, I think we're one of the most innovative companies that are out there. And we kind of work on 3 stools. We have research and cutting edge research, and everything that we do. We've literally spent more money, over $1 billion, on research in the 40 years we've been around, and we're only second to the U.S. government. And then there's all the community work that we do. We have a helpline, so if anyone needs to call our helpline to talk to anyone, we have about 60,000 people that call our helpline every year. We give financial aid to those people that qualify for it to stay in treatment. Those are grants, micro grants that help people, whether they need to use it for food, or for part of their rent, or to get to treatment from transportation, or whatever it is. And then we have public policy and advocacy, where we literally sign into law many, many bills that are Komen led for women's health. And we have about 120,000 advocates that work with us. And there's a lot of power in Women in Pink with pitchforks, and we get stuff done. So, and we're using technology in the work that we're doing. We've just launched a platform, which is the largest patient-led registry, which will be for breast cancer information. It's called Share 4 Cures. So we're asking women, we're going directly to patients women who have had breast cancer, and men who have had breast cancer, to give us their information. And we are really good stewards of their information, and very compliant, and very cyber secure. And the goal for that is, if we get 10,000 people to sign up, we will have the largest registry that is outside of a medical institution, and we might be able to democratize the ability to do research, because we have the top docs and scientists in the world that work with us. And our goal is to figure out why metastasis happens, and figure out how to stop that. So, I was patient 1 that signed up to give my spit, and, it's all identified. So, it's really just for us to be able to figure out what are the commonalities, and what makes people sick, and what happens, and why do people metastasize. And, if we can figure that out, and people can help us with that, then that's super important for us to really make a difference, and perhaps find a cure.
Our producer, Alex Wood, who he was a groomsman in your daughter's wedding.
Right.
And he has said repeatedly that your website is remarkable, and it's a really good source of information. And I asked permission to share this about him as well, is that his mom was diagnosed, went through chemo, was in remission, and then the whole family got tested, and he has BRCA2.
Yeah.
So all of the information that you have sourced in a credible way has been meaningful here to the Finding Mastery team, to Alex's life, as well as his family. And so I just want to give a nod, to how important that resource is.
Yeah. Yeah, because if you do have the gene mutation, which only about 15% to 20% of breast cancers are directly connected to that, right? There's probably some gene. I mean, my mom had it, I had it. There's probably some gene we have. We just don't know what it is yet. So we continuously work on that and we always have about 250 grants going, research grants going at any moment in time. And it's for families, right? Because now Alex, or he has to know that if he has children, they have a 50% chance of having that genetic mutation. And so, and if you do, and you're female, then, you have to make a decision, because the chances are up to 85% that you will have breast or ovarian cancer. So you want to,
if you have the BRCA2,
if you carry
variant.
the BRCA gene mutation, right? So it's significant, right? And even for men, they have additional testing that can be done. But it's good knowledge. People are so afraid of learning this, but
Totally.
it's absolutely knowledge for you to take with you. And if you have someone in your family that has breast cancer, they should have genetic testing. So, and they probably have. But if they haven't and you are part of their direct bloodline, you need to know. Like I have genetic testing fairly regularly, like every 5, 7 years when new things come out. They always ask, my geneticist says you should get tested again. And,
Okay.
and men get breast cancer too, right? So
I didn't know that until Alex. I had no idea until
yep,
just
about
recently.
4% of the men or of the people that get, of the 160,000 women annually or people annually that get breast cancer in the US only, about 4% are men. So, if there's ever if you have it in your family, you should know your family health history. And we have a tool on our website that gives you your family health history. You can fill it out and it'll tell you what you should do. So that's a really good thing and a really good thing to look into.
Is the mission to be a resource for people for information and testing? Is like and research? Is that the mission of the foundation?
The mission is to save lives, right? So in
That's very
general,
cool.
it's to make sure that we have enough research that will find cures. It's to help people wherever they are, and it's also everything that we have has health equity in it. If you are African American, you are 40% more likely to die of breast cancer than if I get it.
Whoa, 45. That's a
40%
huge
more
number.
likely. It's a huge number. Yeah. And where you live
Hmm.
actually dictates part of whether you will survive more or not. So there's cities like Memphis where it's in the 70%. There's a lot. Long Beach is another one. I mean, like DC, Dallas, Fort Worth. These are not little cities. And it has to do with it has to do with a whole bunch of things. Black women or have triple negative, which is the same type of cancer I have. It's more prevalent in the Black community. It's also understanding that your family health history. If you are of Ashkenazi Jewish descent, your chances of having the BRCA gene mutation are much higher. You're 1 in 40 if you're Ashkenazi Jew, male or female, and you are 1 in 350-ish if it's general population. So, get the knowledge. And a lot of people are really afraid to go to the doctor to get this knowledge because, they don't want to know. But if you don't want to get cancer, then no. And there are ways to help yourself. A lot of times for women that have had the BRCA gene, or carry the BRCA gene mutation, they will have a prophylactic mastectomy. They will have an oophorectomy where you get your ovaries out. That happens. But you got to let your doctor in on the knowledge. You got to know what's going on with you because you have to be your own health advocate.
So the test, you go to your GP and you
Yeah.
say, I'd like to run a test for the BRCA 1 or 2
Well,
variant.
normally they will ask you about your family history, and
Mhm.
if there's anything in your family history that dictates, because there's still a cost to these. But if you have aunts or uncles or brothers, sisters, mothers, fathers, any kind of bloodline relative to you that has had it, I suggest you get it done. And it used to be super expensive, right? Because everything it's changed the way and how many people, and 23andMe has it on there, but it only sequences for if you're an Ashkenazi Jew to be correct. So it's better to do it through your doctor. But if you do have a family history of breast cancer, go ask the question.
And it's a saliva swab, if I understand it correctly. And
Yeah, it's a blood test or a saliva swab.
yeah, you can do both. Okay. Is cancer solvable? Like, do you imagine in our lifetime that we're going to solve breast cancer? Let's just stay there.
I'm older than you, so I'm going to go your lifetime. But I do think it's really fascinating because when I went and met with pharma, right, and when I first got here, I wanted to understand, and I met with some of the big pharma people that have breast cancer drugs, and I asked the question like, how many drugs have you had in the last 5 to 10 years? How many do you have coming up? And the velocity is much bigger now. than it was before. It still takes millions and millions, if not billions of dollars to get a drug to market. And so, there's a challenge with costs and all of that. But that aside, you gotta have these drugs in order to make a difference. So I do think that with the velocity of the way that personalized medicine is happening, and we have a scientific advisory group that is made up of the top rock star docs in the world of breast cancer. And we decide internally. I have more doctors working for me than you'd ever think, from a girl that graduated with a degree in Chico State University with costume design and theater. I've got more PhDs that work for me than you can imagine, but they're brilliant folks and they know what they're doing. So we lean on our scientific advisory board to help guide us, because they know what's the newest and greatest and latest of things that are happening in breast cancer.
If you could point to a couple behavioral strategies that you found to be meaningful, whether there's research on it or not at this point, things that you do or you're feeling and sensing that people in the community are doing to be proactive, maybe to be healthy in one respect, but also like if there was some kind of fringe data or very clear data, people that wear their cell phones in their pocket, like that's a problem for certain types of cancer. Like are there some things behaviorally that you can point us to say, okay, look, let's make it really simple.
Okay, things
eat
we
this,
know.
Don't eat that. Yeah, like what are some stuff that you can point us to?
Okay, high alcohol consumption, bad.
What does high mean to you?
I asked, I love my wine, and I asked my scientific advisory board. They said keep it at 2 a week, 2 glasses of wine a week. Okay.
I thought you said an hour, but you said a week.
No, I said a week, not an hour.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That research is pretty clear. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So there's alcohol, there's obesity, right? And just think about it. If everything you do, if you exercise, your life is better. Your body is healthier. It can fight off things more readily. When I was diagnosed with breast cancer, I was, I felt like I'm really not a candidate, although my mom had it, and because I ate organically and I exercised regularly and I was an athlete and all of those things. But if not you, who? Right? So it's not going to stop you if you're going to get it, but you can possibly stave it off or be much healthier through your treatment. And sugar is another thing that a lot intake of sugar, and that also has to do with the alcohol. It's your body can't metabolize it. And then also the exercise portion of it that we know, and obesity, being severely overweight.
When you say sugar, are you thinking?
You can ask me how many chocolate kisses I can eat a week, or
no, but like refined sugar versus.
Yeah, if you're eating date sugar, is going to be better for you than refined sugar, but it's sugar, and it's
sugar.
How your body metabolizes sugar, right? So, but you gotta. I'm sort of the moderation kind of person, because I do like a glass of wine and I do like a cookie now and then, but you try to control that, and you try to make sure that you're keeping your body in peak form. It's just like any other kind of training, right? If you want to stay healthy, you stay healthy for as long as you can by moving.
It really is what our grandparents or great grandparents have said to us for a while. There's a reason we've survived to get here, and there's some great wisdom that has been passed down. And so great framing. I love that. Thank you. And I just want to say again, I want to say thank you. I was really excited to have this conversation with you. And I think that I try not to get ahead of my skis imagining what the conversation is going to be like. And I want to be really open to the feel of people. But I had this sense that you were going to have this type of grounded approach to life. And I don't want to prop you up in any way that's false, but it just feels that way on this part of the conversation. It's refreshing.
Well, thank you. And I appreciate the time and being considered for your podcast, because, you have the best of the best, and I'm really honored to be here.
My sense from this conversation is that you are open to ideas. You explore ideas. You're open to experiences. Like you're not rigid when it says, oh no, we can't do that. Like there's an openness and exploratory nature. You have a high conscientiousness. It feels to me that you're an extroverted thinker. You make quick decisions. you gather information and you use this nice blend between tactile, concrete, but also this intuitive way of gathering information, which is super interesting to me. It also seems that you know that you're competent. Like you don't suffer in that way. And you present yourself with high autonomy. Like, yeah, actually in control of myself. I have agency about how I move through the world, and my relationships are intact for the most part. Like you have relationships that matter and are meaningful to you. And I think you're able to switch gears between like a broad attentional profile and then narrow down and go broad again and get the big picture and then narrow down, and you're not encumbered and you're not slowed down or bogged down by staying in one too long. So there's a nice performance attentional profile that you've got there. And I think you've got this exacting honesty, which there's some kindness in there, of course, but this exacting honesty that allows you to be kind and not critical, but exacting with the information that you give people, which I think that there's a little bit of a, let's call it a dull stick that you're able to put in via your presence and your questions and your thinking, a dull stick in people's back. Like, okay, I got to be great here because like she's working on that level. So I want to be on that level as well. I don't have a sense if you're critical to yourself.
No, probably not.
Yeah.
Because, there's also the extending kindness to yourself. I remember when I was going into to Susan G. Komen for the first day, and one of my best friends said to me, "What the hell do you think you're doing? How do you think that this transfers from anything else that you've done into this? And what are you going to do? Like day one, what are you going to do when you walk in there?" And I go, "I guess I'm going to listen." And, and I know that's very cliche and all of that, but think about it. I'm a fashion girl from over here, and I worked in private equity, and I've done all these really interesting things, but I ran American Apparel. I did a lot of really interesting things in my career. And then all of a sudden I'm now surrounded by doctors and by people that are, so much smarter than me in so many areas, in areas that I have no idea about. We have our head of our scientific advisory board, and I had the opportunity. They said, Dr. Sledge, who ran oncology for Stanford, right? He was the head of our advisory board. He would love to have dinner with you. I said, great. And I'm thinking to myself, what the hell are we going to talk about? He's probably thinking this is the worst choice they could have ever made for Susan G. Komen, because, this is not a doctor. It's not, I don't know what he's thinking, but in my mind, right. I'm swirling this around thinking, okay. So we go and we have dinner, and he says to me, "Listen, Paula," and we have a really nice time. We're getting along great. And he says to me, "It might be nice if I could like teach you give you a little tutelage on, a lot of the medical side of breast cancer and all of that." And I'm thinking to myself, and I can't control it, so I just speak. And I said, "George, let me tell you how that would go. It would be like me learning Chinese and dealing with the highest level of the Chinese government. Okay. I'm going to step in it all day long. No one is going to know, no one is going to take me seriously. So if I take myself that seriously and really try to be that person that knows all about medicine after 15 minutes of being at Komen, I'm going to lose all respect that I would have otherwise garnered. So why don't I do what I do, which is bring the best and smartest people around me, get us all motivated, get us in the same boat, the same river, and then rowing in the same direction. And you help me with that, others. And come with me to these meetings that I'm not going to know crap about, because you have a pedigree." So, and he did. And we had this fabulous relationship, still have this fabulous relationship of him helping Komen in ways that I could not, and I would never be able to. And I'm 6 years in, and I still can't tell you the glories of the cell cycle, and nor do I need to, because I need to be the leader of the band. And I need to be able to say, to get everyone moving in the right direction for what the common goal is. And once we've established that, everybody understands what's expected of them and what the dates and gates and milestones are. I'm fabulous at putting together strategic plans, because, and I don't create them myself. We create them together, and then everybody has buy-in and we go. So, and that wasn't, I've learned that a little, probably the second half of my career rather than the first, where I fumbled through it. Right. But then you learn, and those are things that will help your organization regardless of what it is. Have a plan, execute to the plan.
That sounds like a masterclass in the first 100 days of leadership.
Okay. Except I only went to the school of hard knocks. I didn't go to grad school.
Your response is great. You're like, okay.
I tried to teach. I tried to offer my services at some of the colleges around LA to teach a class on putting together a business plan, right? Because I felt like both my girls went to USC. It's a fabulous school, but they didn't teach anything like that unless you were in the business program. And it should be part of your general ed, understanding business. And so I went out and I offered my services. They pay you $1.12. So it's not like I thought it was very philanthropic of me to do that. And I got turned down everywhere because I don't have a master's. I couldn't teach at like the worst junior college in Southern California because I don't have my master's. And I thought, okay, well, again, no formal training, right? I never took a finance class, but I've run businesses that were, almost $1 billion.
You've got stadiums of people listening and hanging on every word right now, which is like, it's so good. Like I have just loved this conversation, how you approach it. And it feels like you know who you are. Your first principles are clear and you're able to contribute all of yourself into the environments that you go. And that's a pebble in the pond, and it's a pretty damn big pebble.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, it's very cool. So listen, thank you. And I'm rooting for all of your efforts, and thank you for showing up for so many people in my life and intimately here at the Finding Mastery team for being great.
Listen, if anyone wants to help Komen, I would be remiss if I didn't say just go on Komen.org. And, there's nothing that's going to cure cancer other than cash, and cash pays for research. So, here we are.
Any advice for October right now? Any advice that you've got for folks?
If you're a woman, put your big girl panties on and make sure you've had your mammogram, because that's the most important thing is if there is a finding that you find it earlier so you can live through it. And, other than that, find something that you're passionate about. People, I've been running a philanthropy now for 6 years, and find some place to do good and then do it. If there's something that is meaningful for you, do it. Give your time, give your energy, give your your money, whatever it is that you can do to make the world a better place, because it is so gratifying to do that. The very first day I walked into Komen, and I hadn't even seen the offices, and that's a big pink wall right outside my office. It said, "The work that you do here saves lives." And it was incredibly meaningful for me. It almost brought a tear to my eye. And I thought, wow, that's a big onus of responsibility. So, I'm in it to win it. And I can't retire until we cure breast cancer. So people out there, help me retire. I want to play more tennis.
Paula, what a gift. Thank you so much. And this has just been a real treat.
Pleasure,
so thank
Mike.
you
Thank
again
you
for coming on.